Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to today's webinar where we will be discussing dark social, which is arguably the most important marketing data source that brands are currently not tracking by and large. A lot of the reason for this is because it's a relatively new concept that people are just now kind of wrapping their arms around. So there's a vast majority of marketers out there who may not even know it exists, let alone how it directly impacts their day-to-day. But no worries, this is going to be a relatively quick webinar, and we'll give you a good primer so that you can kind of figure out how to work with this concept for your own specific initiatives. Before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that you're welcome to submit questions as I kind of go through the presentation and talk. I will try to get to as many as humanly possible at the end. But if for whatever reason I don't get to your question, please reach out to us either on Twitter, our handle is @unified, or you can email us at marketing@unified.com. Just a quick note for those of you that may not be familiar with Unified as a company. We are an award-winning marketing and analytics tech company that has run billions of dollars for Global 2000 level brands for their ad campaigns. And we're also the only company globally that has two components. One has access to 6 of the top social network ads APIs, and also has the ability to track dark social. So that's just a really quick overview of Unified and what we do. So let's just jump into what we're going to be discussing today. We'll start off with some common challenges that we're seeing over and over from our customers and in industry conversations. Challenges that are directly in relation to dark social, as well as challenges that we're seeing more and more, especially in the past couple of years. From there, we're going to go into defining what multi-generational dark social is, what it means, how does it fit into social advertising overall. And after that, we'll kind of jump into why it's so critical. Why should you care? Then we'll touch on how this actually affects a potential real live campaign, which will further kind of illustrate why it's so crucial and so important. And then we'll end off things with some takeaways. So if you forget everything I say today, we'll give you 3 things to remember. Okay, so what are these challenges that we're talking about? There's 3 common struggles, we affectionately call them campaigns, that marketers are kind of going through potentially related to dark social. The first challenge has to do with measurement, right? So if you think about how quickly the social advertising landscape is expanding with new players, Snapchat just launched their ad part. Pinterest was last year. We're just seeing more and more networks enter the space. So we're seeing the days of a single channel buy slowly getting behind us. So as a marketer, if you have multiple channels that you're running your marketing campaigns on, this can get a little messy in terms of aggregating that data and figuring out how to measure effectively cross-device, cross-channel, etc. So just about 60% of marketers expect to increase the time and the resources spent on figuring out this kind of cross-social measurement. The second challenge is about accountability. It's really an added pressure from the top down to show real ROI or success that stems from the marketing investments and the marketing campaigns that are run. So more and more marketers are finding themselves under a little bit of a microscope to prove that the decisions and the strategies that they're putting into place are really getting the brand towards their goals. And last but not least, about half of marketers lack the technology, the software, the infrastructure to accurately track their successes from their initiatives, which of course kind of ties into the first point where there's a need to spend more time and resources on this sort of measurement. So what is this thing? What is multi-generational dark social, and how does that kind of tie into the challenges presented? To answer this question, we're going to start off by talking about how dark social and multi-generational activity kind of fit into the overall social advertising pie. And I hope most of you have eaten lunch already, although otherwise I apologize for making you potentially very hungry. But let's kind of get into this. So the very top piece represents collaboration. So these are internal and external teams that are working on a single marketing initiative and need to have an effective flow of communication. So if you think about a large brand that may have multiple agencies that they're working with, plus multiple internal teams, whether it be multiple marketing teams, an analytics team, whatever the case may be, there has to be a continuous flow of communication to make sure that everyone is playing off the same playbook and they are making decisions that benefit the company as a whole. Then you kind of move into performance, but performance specifically in relating to ad deployment and ad optimization. So how do you efficiently launch your ads across channels and optimize them as time goes along so that you're able to effectively see what's going on and make adjustments as needed? As your ad campaigns are running, you're collecting a lot of data. So as a result of that, you're going to need to normalize and you're going to need to collect all of that data together. Without that, you're going to not get the amount of visibility and the amount of control that you need. So this is really in relation to gaining insights or even being able to prep your data in a useful way. Then you kind of move into intelligence. So once your data is collected and it's aggregated and it's normalized and you can really dig deep into what's going on, from there you can glean your actionable insights, points that you can make adjustments and decisions off of. So in that vein, you want to make sure that you have the cross-channel and real-time reporting for your paid audience, your organic, and your creative. Lastly, we go into measurement. And measurement meaning really attribution. Being able to assign specific actions, conversions, revenue, successes to the proper originating source, no matter how many generations of engagements that are present. And this is where dark social fits in. And this is what we're going to be honing in on today. So back in 2012, so 4 short years ago, the term dark social was coined by Alexis Mandrigal, who wrote an article for The Atlantic. And from there, we've kind of seen it grow and develop as a definition, but it kind of lands here, right? So it's really the downstream engagement and sharing activity. All of those retweets, the likes, the posts, the comments, the off-site clicks, all of that activity that stems directly from a specific type of action. And that action is when a user will click on your post, go to the URL of choice, the landing page or website, copy that URL, and then move on to share that in the channel of their choice. So it's a very kind of specific definition, and we'll go into greater detail about this. So to crystallize this in your mind a little bit more, we're going to go through a specific example. Our fictitious brand, Music Champs, has put together an advertising campaign, which, as you can see here, they decide to publish to Facebook. Now, one of the users in their targeting group, let's call her Amanda, sees the ad, connects with it, clicks off-site, and is engaging with the promotion, learning more about it, etc. This is what we're calling first-generation engagement, first generation of activity, right? This really means that Amanda was directly exposed to the ad posted by the brand. So she's in that first tier or first generation of users who have decided to further engage with the ad. This is also the area that's well documented. The native tools that you can use directly from Twitter, Facebook, etc. All track this very well, this type of engagement. There's third-party vendors that track this level of engagement very well. This tends to be where performance is documented in a more complete manner. Well, let's say Amanda isn't stopping there. Let's say she really, really likes what she sees and she wants to share it. So she already went to the website and she wants to tweet. She tweets the link, and one or two of her followers see this, and they decide to interact with the ad. We'll call them Janet and Patrick. So once they interact with the ad, they like it too. Let's say they want to share it, and they do so towards a different channel. Maybe Janet decides to email it to her sister. Maybe Patrick decides to chat it to his best friend. And then the chain goes on and on and on. This is the area that we're calling multi-generational or dark social activity. And consequently, where most standard measurement stops cold. Okay, so we've decided, what some of the challenges are. We kind of went through what dark social is. We know that there's some untracked activity, but why is it so important? And we'll cover 3 reasons and 3 supporting stats. The first reason is that dark social or multi-generational activity accounts for as much as 70% or more in some cases of sharing activity directly stemming from a post. So in essence, this means your performance could be significantly higher than you're actually able to measure. That's further crystallized by the amount of revenue that could potentially come from these audiences, which can amount to as much as 34%. And finally, multi-gen dark social audiences tend to convert at twice the rate as their first generation counterparts. So they're much more in tune with the content, and they're much more likely to take action based off of it. Then you get into why is this such a big part of sharing? And it really boils down to sharing behavior in general. So 75%, 3/4 of online users share content online. About the same amount will trust content from someone they know. Pretty self-explanatory. And then, again, still around the same amount, are more likely to share content from someone they know. It all kind of seems like common sense, but once you see it together, you can kind of see how it could account for 70% of sharing. Also, when you think about it, once you click off of a website, you're not necessarily going to go back and use the share button. Once you're on the website, the quickest thing to do is to copy that URL and then paste it in whatever format you want. So it just kind of tends to all work together. So we know abstractly what this is about. Let's kind of get into how it would actually affect a live campaign. So the example I'm about to show you is actually based, it's going to be Muse Champs again, but it's actually based in a real case study that we've done with M. Michelle Phan, which was part of the L'Oreal brand group originally at the time. And if you're interested in learning more about what this brand did, the channels, what they were trying to achieve, or more about the campaign in general, you can actually go ahead to our website and read it. It's on our research page, which is on unify.com/research. So I encourage you all to kind of look at the real campaign behind this example. But for the sake of simplicity, we're going to go back to our friends at Music Champs, who, as you can see, has a budget of just over $56,000 to run their ad. Now, I'm going to kind of note here that a typical use case would not just be Facebook. It would be multiple channels potentially. So it can get very complex very quickly with different types of creative, etc. But we're kind of simplifying it for the purposes of this webinar. So if you think about engagement, which is probably the most basic measurement that you can get on social media, the assumed, based off of first generation tracking, is that they got approximately 60,000 engagements. But when you factor in multi-gen and dark social, turns out they got more than 3 times that amount. So it's a pretty significant difference. When it comes to clicks, very similar story. They assume about 30,000. In actuality, they didn't account for about 23% of their clicks, which came from multi-gen dark social activity. Orders. They didn't even think they reached 4,000. When in reality, there were almost 2,000 orders that were either unattributed to this campaign completely, which normally tends to get attributed towards organic, or misattributed. Then when you kind of switch gears to cost efficiencies and conversions, you see, again, a similar story. So in the cost per click realm, they think that They got a CPC of $1.78. But of course, in reality, it's about 41 cents lower. So they were way more efficient than they thought. Cost per engagement, thought it was just under $1, when in reality, it was 70% lower than what they had tracked. And conversion rate, thought they got about 12%, when in fact it was 15% higher than their original calculations. So you can see here that this becomes very significant very quickly, especially when you think about the fact that more and more marketers are getting added pressure to prove performance. You can see that in those meetings, this would be extraordinarily helpful to have that added piece put into play. But let's not forget about the single most important factor yet, which is revenue. And in this case, you guessed it, they missed out on some significant revenue, almost give or take $10,000, $9,500. Now, if they ran several campaigns across several channels, that can quickly balloon into a much larger number. So hopefully by now you've kind of wrapped your head around this concept of multi-generational dark social activity. But just in case you zoned out or you need a little more confirmation, we're going to leave you with these three things. First takeaway is that multi-generational dark social is really a critical piece, but it should be considered in context. You need kind of all of those components of that social advertising pie to be accounted for, and you look at dark social as a very important piece of that overall pie. Second is that the vast majority of your sharing could be coming from these audiences. So it's an indicator of how viral your content is actually going. So very critical piece. Last but not least, it's critical to your bottom line as well, where you can really deduce that a specific initiative was able to bring in a specific amount of money. 34%, in fact, has been proven to come from these types of audiences. So with that, I'm going to open it up to some questions. We have a few minutes here, so I think I can take a few. So let's see. First question is, why are dark social audiences twice as likely to convert? What drives that behavior? Okay, so in order to answer that question, I'll go back to the slide about sharing behavior. So if you think about it, we saw that the vast majority, 73% to be precise, not only trust the content that they see from friends and family more, but they also are more likely to share that content. So if you think about the first generation of users, they're not seeing it from someone who has a personal connection with them. They're seeing it directly to brand, which some people might be a little bit more guarded against, knowing that the brand has an agenda to sell them something. In contrast, if you see that same ad, but it's coming from your brother or your best friend or your son, it's going to resonate that much more. You're going to trust it that much more. So we think that that's really the driver behind the increased conversion rate for these multi-generational audiences. I'll also kind of add on to this here. You can think of your first generation as important advocates of your content, and if you're able to get them to share it, then it's all honey from there. You're more likely to reach a more in-tune audience with what you're trying to accomplish. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about layers of audiences. Okay, we'll take another question. Let's see. How is dark social tracked? Okay, so this is somewhat complex, but I will explain it the best way, in the simplest form I can. So essentially what happens is that there's a proprietary code that's placed on a brand's website. They can highlight specific pages or do the entire website. At any rate, what that code does is it's able to create an identifier at the end of each URL. So this identifier is cataloged and organized on the back end so that we can tell how they relate to one another. So if you think about Amanda clicking on the ad and going to Music Champ's website, once she visits the website, that URL has an identifier at the end of the link. Then when her friends went to the website, that generated what we call a child link. So it's connected to Amanda's identifier, but it's not the exact same one. So through being able to use these identifiers at the end of the links, we're able to track different generations, but more importantly, where the origins of certain sharing behaviors come from. Okay, next question. Is there a channel or ad type that's affected by dark social sharing more than others? Okay, let me think about this. So from what we've known so far, it tends to be more of a case-by-case situation. So if you think about what's in your marketing suite, maybe Twitter seems more important at the moment than an Instagram or a Snapchat or vice versa. You're going to build a bigger presence just inherently on some channels over others. So consequently to that, you'll find that those can be significant drivers of the dark social multi-gen activity. So for example, in the N. Michelle Phan study that's on our site, we tracked their activity, but really Michelle Phan started off as a YouTube star. So as you can imagine, Google played a significant role in driving this multi-generational activity because she already had established herself on that platform. Is dark social tracked in real time? The short answer is yes. Social moves at the speed of light, so all of the data that's collected moves at the same rate. So much like other metrics are recorded in real time, so is dark social. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. What is the difference between multi-generational engagement and dark social? Okay, so the term multi-generational really refers to the audiences past that first generation. So that's to say that the layers of audience groups that are not directly seeing the brand's ad. So that could be the second generation, it could be the 1000th generation. All of those would be considered multi-generational. Dark social is multi-generational activity, but it's distinctly from when someone shares content by copying and pasting links as opposed to other potential types of sharing options such as sharing buttons. And let's just take one more question. Can it be tracked for only paid content, or is it available for organic as well? Great question. So it can be tracked for both paid and organic, but it's important to make a distinction here. We've seen organic reach start to plummet as a lot of the networks are changing their algorithms and changing priorities. So we're seeing kind of a decline in organic reach. And as a result, marketers seem to be focusing less and less on organic specifically. So the value for understanding dark social activity for paid therefore becomes extremely valuable, arguably more valuable than organic, and more impactful at driving real ROI. So it really is the focus for a lot of brands as opposed to organic, but it's also helpful to see the organic against the paid to really understand what channel is driving your virality. Okay, so it looks like we're a few minutes past 2:30. So I don't want to hold everyone up, but I hope that you have enjoyed this webinar. Feel free, again, to reach out to us on social or via email if you have additional questions. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thank you so much.